Good morning, Misha.
Good morning, Jess. I'm just going to turn my microphone up. There we go. A little bit.
How are
How you
you
going?
going?
Yeah, good. Really good, actually.
Yeah,
Yourself?
I'm really good too. Rested after having a big weekend of work
Yeah, I'm
and just
rested.
really looking forward to this podcast again.
Me too. I was a bit excited.
Yeah, that was so great. I felt so great after doing that and especially launching on Saturday. A bit nervous, but oh well, it is what it is.
Yeah, same. I think the crux of it is though, so I launched this on my YouTube page and it's called Have a Yak. And the truth is, like I was saying to my son, I just love having a yak.
Yeah.
I love having a chat to people. It's as simple as that.
And we
So
often have a yak and a long yak.
we can yak. Imagine if we look all the hours that we've talked because we have to go via Zoom because we live interstate from each other.
Hmm.
Imagine the amount, like if recording all of the amount of time that we've spent talking, on Messenger or whatever, Zoom.
It's been about 4 years.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think at some point when we were doing our own little processes and whatever, we said we should video these, we should tape them, but we never did.
No, I think we attempted to a couple of times, but there was some real anxiety around recording.
Yeah. Well, they are vulnerable moments and,
Yeah.
not to be shared all the time.
No, no, that's right.
And we did speak just before going on about the idea of perhaps filming some of the processes later on down the track and,
Mm,
not exposing all our vulnerabilities, but perhaps going through some and showing little bit of snippets of what we're doing and how we
mm,
feel about it. And as coaches, what we're attempting to do in working with the client.
yeah, I think it'd be valuable because just little snippets, like you say, because there's probably a lot of stigma around seeking help,
Mm.
particularly for men, as we know. But just because of statistics, that's and I think it would be good because it can give people an insight into what it kind of looks like, and that it's not as scary as all that, and it's actually can be fun, even very useful,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just exploring self. It can be fun.
Yeah. I certainly have. Like I've loved personal development, I'd say since my teens.
Same.
Always looking towards growth and developing and understanding myself. I remember one of the first, I used to go to secondhand bookshops in my teens. There were a lot of them back then.
There
And I
was.
used to find books on yoga. There was a lot of yoga stuff back then and
Mm,
meditation. And that's how I kind of got into personal development because I thought, how come these people can do these weird things? Why can't I do it?
mm.
Um, and yeah, so I've always had a fascination and love for personal development.
When you say weird things, Jess, what do you mean specifically that led you down the path of personal development? What do you mean?
I remember those books in the early days, they were the yoga books, and they didn't really talk about meditation a lot. Meditation was kind of part of the end of yoga in the
Mm,
early 80s. You
mm,
couldn't just go and find a meditation book. I remember everything was about yoga and yogis, the Beatles, what they were doing, what they
mm,
had done. Um, and so when I said say those weird things, I was talking about out of body experiences in meditation
mm,
and just what states you could change in yourself by meditating and doing chants. Even
mm,
Tina Turner, she
mm,
was doing a lot of chanting.
mm.
Do you remember all the chants she used to do
Not really,
to get
no,
into
no,
state?
no,
She was
no.
amazing.
Mm,
As we know, she went through a really hard time in
mm.
her marriage and in her life. And that is what gave her the empowerment to change her state, the chanting.
So you recognize that she used that as a tool and you thought, oh, that looks cool. Like she's able to turn her life around. So
Yep.
what's she doing? What's she using?
Yeah,
Mm,
which was
mm,
beautiful now that I think back on it because it was like intuitive. My young self
mm,
going through whatever I had been going as a teen,
mm,
probably my parents' breakup, as well. But my body was intuitively going towards do this for yourself, seek something else. You need more tools, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for having known that
So
somewhere
you started
inside me.
Chance, and then, but this journey that we're on now, it's a lot different to Chance. I mean, in the sense that
I never could do the chants. I
ah.
tried. I tried and tried with the books, but what I could do was get into a state, change my state by meditating, by even trying to meditate. Like I had no idea what I was doing back then, but I was trying to change state by learning meditation. I would do the chants and it would be like, oh, can't get my mouth around these words. But the meditation is what I became really good at. And just and just sitting in that and going inside myself. That was very powerful for me early on.
So changing states, then you feel like that's a really,
now that we've done NLP, I know that it's changing states, but back then I had no idea what it was. I was just a teenager.
Changing state. So if you're changing state, what are you changing from? What state are you changing
Dysregulation, whatever was going on, fear, uncertainty, whatever was coming up as a teenager, insecurity.
And conditioning maybe too, like you're just in a conditioned response all the time maybe, or was there something intuitively that recognized that, do you think, or don't know? Just
I have no idea, but when I look back, I can see that intuitively I was seeking more information for myself, which is what you and I recognize in each other that we do a lot of. We feel that there's something, some tool we're missing, or we feel that we could do better. We feel we could have navigated certain parts of what we're going through in a different way where we're not hurting ourselves all the time. We're not in dysregulation. And I think you and I both have gone towards that. I mean, even going on the NLP journey that we've been on, we're seeking something, we're seeking those tools.
And why is dysregulation bad? So that we then go to seek tools, bad, it's just a word, but why is it? Why do we want to move away from dysregulation?
I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's something that that hurts. And if you're constantly in pain, it would be like if you're in a relationship or if you're in a marriage where you're constantly being hurt, you're constantly in an ever-changing state, you're not in harmony, your body's not in harmony, your mind is not peaceful, you don't know what that even is. Like you do want to get to a point in life where you can consider that there are states where you can be in peace. So it's almost like being in a relationship that's dysregulated. Like you do want that homeostasis in the body.
Yeah, homeostasis being
that peace, that balance, that
regulated
inner harmony. Yeah. What do you
balance.
think?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you have said so far. I think I think it's kind of segues into what we're doing. The reason why we do it is because it's suffering, essentially, is what you were describing, and we want to move away from suffering. And suffering could even, it doesn't have to be that we're in this painful, oh, this is dreadful state. It could just be a state that is much of the same, just going around doing the same thing over and over again, and it's not satisfying. It doesn't feel healthy. It isn't inspiring, so it could even just be those things. That could be a motivator to move away from just the same state as you were saying. So I can see why the appeal to look at different states, and it certainly was the same for me when I was I was probably in my late teens, looking for different states. But I looked for them in different ways first, and I looked at them through experimental drugs as well. and again, it was my intuition. Now, it went in a way that, you know, whatever could be controversial, but my intuition just wanted to seek something else, a different state, not necessarily an altered state that experimental drugs sort of bring on, but it was just different. And I suppose, you know, touching on what we talked about last week, where alcohol was concerned, alcohol was that for me as well. So those things are kind of not really useful in the sense that, I mean, I suppose there are some people that can try experimental drugs and it can be very useful. For me, it kind of just puts me in a kind of a sort of a one state. You know, it's like, say if it's drunk, you know, if you're drinking alcohol, say for example, I obviously sought that when I was in my teens to move into a different state, but it wasn't helpful.
Well, it was helpful in that moment.
At the time, it broke it, you know, but it kind of it sets you in this pattern and then it becomes escapism rather than a useful different state. You know, it just becomes, it's useful at the time and it's fun and all that sort of stuff, but it becomes escapism, and then you end up getting into patterns of just drinking or whatever as a teen. Same with drugs as well, or whatever, the altered states. It became escapism rather than something that was useful in everyday life. So then in my 20s, that's when I early 20s, started looking at other, you know, modalities like anything in the personal development realm or self-help, as they called it, or just anything. I just started reading like crazy, just people, all the different types of experiences people were having in the world that were altered states. Meditation and yoga didn't actually come to me until my late 20s or probably early 30s. And I still use those now because they are so useful in terms of just getting into a really nice, balanced state.
Yeah. I think that's very common. And I probably would have done the same, except that I needed to be in control at a very young age. And I think going towards drugs and alcohol scared me more. I was more scared of being out of control in that way. So
ironically, sorry, keep going. Yeah.
So it was almost like a way of how do I make my mind even more acute and more probably clearer, but in peak performance. Kind of, I was looking for that in my mind. So it didn't kind of occur to me to go towards drugs and alcohol because that wouldn't give me that. It would just make me happy for a bit, but I wouldn't be in peak clear performance in my mind.
Interesting. I think because of what we talked about last week too, I wanted to be out of control. I actually wanted to relinquish, you know, to let go of control because as I said last week in my podcast, I just became rigid with it, you know. So it was a way for me to just break through, and experimental drugs was an amazing way to just let go of that control. You were completely out of control. You don't, you know, so it was like a seesaw. I kind of just went from that, you know, I had to rigidly control every aspect of my self, and then through alcohol and experimental drugs was able to go the other side. But then much like you, as I sort of hit my probably 30s and 40s, that's when I started going, no, I want to peak. I just want you know, to be completely in my own zone, like be in the zone. You know, just really try to sharpen those things as well.
I love that word sharp, because I think that's what I was looking for, that sharpness, to be on point, on ready for anything, which is sad in a way because I was very young. But also I just wanted to ask you, when you did lose control, how did that feel to just relinquish control?
Amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. However, to now, with having had that experience, and I think what we've just spoken to in terms of sharpening, I want I felt like that was too much of a seesaw.
Mm-hmm.
So then to come back to reality was a bit of a shock. So a downer, as they call it, because in reality, I was quite a controlled person. I'm trying to control every little facet of everything, in my internal world and my external experience. Whereas with the sort of drugs and alcohol, boom, just all goes out the window. There is no, you just let it all go. You can't control a thing, really. So, so it was an amazing experience to let it all go. And I think what I've tried to do since then is try to find that balance between the two, where understanding the control and then but also try to let it go, in reality, try to let it go as much as possible.
So you're looking for that balance.
The balance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So going back to control, which is our main topic for the podcast, last week we discussed all sorts of strategies that we saw in ourselves, and you gave some examples. I gave some examples of the different ways that we've tried to control children, the outcome that you were talking about, trying to control outcome. And I had a question about that. What I did notice was there was this reoccurring pattern that you were saying about how control showed up in your life. And it was kind of across the board for both of us that there was an avoidance strategy that we both could see in our lives when control was present. But for you specifically, you said that there was times where you were trying to control an outcome. Is there something about that you saw?
So what I recognized was I was in kind of patterns of behavior that were almost acting like a fixation. You were talking about, you brought that fixation thing up, and it's true. I think what I recognize within myself is that patterns of behavior can be used like as a fixation, and we don't even actually recognize that we're in them. And avoidance thing, it's an avoidance thing, to avoid what's really going on underneath, so you often talk about the need behind the need, say. So I've recognized that you can get fixated on certain things, ideas, whatever it is, internal frames, external things. We become fixated on them, and then they become a tool to avoid looking at what's actually going on underneath. What's the need? What do I really need here? Or what do I need to understand about myself? So in terms of control, I'm unconsciously controlling, going towards something that could actually free me up, that could create a better outcome for myself, because I'm so, and I don't even recognize that I'm in this fixated pattern. But I'm using that pattern as an avoidance, really, to go deeper or to look for a way out. It's just safer to be in this pattern. This pattern. Does that make sense?
So when you say it's safer to be in this pattern, are you saying that the outcome you're seeking by controlling, not going to whatever will take you to growth and avoiding it, you're going towards a pattern of safety? That's the outcome? Safety? Is that what you're saying? What is the outcome that you saw, that you recognized when you were doing these patterns, that you were avoiding something, and so the outcome was to go somewhere where there wasn't growth unconsciously?
Yeah, I think it is perceived safety. Yeah. I think it's yeah, I'm perceiving this pattern at that unconscious level even as being a safe space. It's like Groundhog Day or something like that, where you just
Yes.
there's something in us that likes the safety of whatever we're fixated on.
What we think is safety.
It's what we think is safety.
Yeah.
It's a known quantity. It's a known, something that's known, therefore is safe. And we would rather stay in that. I've recognized I'd rather, again, at that unconscious level, and even there's just something in us that's going, stay in this, stay in this, stay in this, because this is safe. Now, and it is a perceived safety thing, because the unknown is a bit scary, so we think that by going deeper or looking at, the need behind that outcome of safety, we think that that's much better than the alternative, which is looking in. What's the fear? We're going to have to address a fear.
Yes. Very scary.
So, yeah, it's scary. It's scary, so it's just safer to stay. And we are controlling kind of our experience, I suppose, by constantly staying in this patterned response.
Yeah,
it's a control mechanism. It's kind of like, oh, safety, this is safety, perceived safety. Oh, stay here.
Yeah.
Stay
wow.
Here, stay here.
I really like that you said we are controlling our experience. Not that I enjoy that, but it alerts to something that we do in NLP a lot, which we're going to get to later on by the end of the podcast, hopefully. But it is that, and it kind of did come up in the podcast a little bit around controlling the information that comes into us. Because we are also trying to control our experience. So if you're trying to control the experience that you want to have, we also at times control what information does come in, so it doesn't alter that experience. So we don't ever sit in a place where we go, oh, maybe I've been wrong about the way that I want to experience life because of this perceived safety that I'm in, this little bubble. My way is the right way.
Yeah.
And it would open us up to growth if we were to let information in that would contradict that safety.
Yeah. Yeah. And it speaks to a little bit of that thing that I was talking about too last week about right or wrong. For some reason that becomes a benchmark, like something that locks the door. It locks that door to information because it's like, I'm right. I don't need to open the door. It's just something that I
very internal frame. Yeah.
So that need, if therefore right, and they stick to that story, I'm right. Yeah. They can lock the door, throw away the key, and there is no need to look in and expand beyond that.
That's right.
Safer to be right and in your own, well, you just said it, internal frame, I suppose, just right. But then, of course, you've got a whole heap of other people that share the same internal view or same view, worldview, what do you want to call it, and then you all agree together, so
you're all safe together in that perceived safety.
You're all safe together. So, yeah, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, where conflict's concerned and potentially control has something to do with that. I've heard it said a lot lately that conflict is good. So I wanted to hear what you have to say about that.
I would have to agree, being a very conflictive person, I'd say. I've been called conflictive, which is very interesting. I don't think I mean to be conflictive, but I do like to get into it. I'm very passionate sometimes about certain things. Not that I'm aiming to be right, but I do aim to get all sides of arguments. And I really love the sides of arguments that haven't been disclosed as well for some reason. That's the way I've been. Um, I remember early on, there was all sorts of political arguments when I was in my early 20s. And then there was, coming from South America, there was always a lot of political arguments. And I used to be a bit of a fence sitter. And not so much that I didn't ever agree with either argument, but it was, what about the stuff we don't know about? That's what I was intrigued in. It's always been arguing for the left or the right. But I used to think, well, what if there's an alternative to those two stupid things that we keep arguing? What if there's a better way,
And you don't think that anymore?
Yeah, I still do. Like, I always think there's just ways that we haven't tried yet, or there's ways that we haven't created yet.
So you said conflict is good, then why is it good? Like, what about, say, so you said, you express, you're expressive, and then you want to explore sort of both sides to an argument or something through conflict. Yep. It's not necessarily about being right or wrong. So what is the good element to conflict then? Is it expression?
I think, yeah, it's expression for me. It's speaking your truth as well.
Yeah.
Even if the truth is uncomfortable, I would prefer to speak my truth, even if I felt I was wrong. It doesn't matter, because it's not really about being right or wrong, but it's just about speaking your truth. And I think if I'm speaking my truth, I'm kind of more in my authentic being. And that, to me, is not being in a control zone. It's just flowing with who I'm here to be, with who I am. And so, I was,
yeah, so keep going. And you were?
I was thinking about this during the week after the podcast, about what it is to not be in control. And I think it would be to be your authentic self without all the stuff that we put on ourselves, the conditioning and the patterns that we've picked up from our parents, the ways that we've been taught as children, even control tactics that we might have modeled from our parents. That's not authentic. It's stuff that was there before all of that is authentic to me.
Well, could conflict be something that's not authentic as well, because you've learned it from your parents? Like, yeah, you've learned to be combative, you've learned to argue, you've learned to
yell. Definitely. It might be a conditioned thing, right? But in the conflict, you actually get to expose each other. You get to speak your truths, and you can get somewhere closer to your truth.
So is never-ending conflict good too then? Like, and where's the end point? Is there an end point? Can you just conflict until you start killing each other? Or where's the point where conflict is no longer healthy?
I don't think conflict needs to get there. I don't think it needs to get to a point where you're killing each other. I'm not talking about violence.
Okay. So I'm talking is an extension of conflict.
Could be, yeah. But okay. I'm not talking about that kind of conflict. I'm just talking about, yeah, it's okay to have different points of views. And I don't need to put my point of view across to squash your point of view. But it is okay for me to speak my truth and where I'm sitting, and you don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to like it, and you don't have to take it on at all. But I do get the chance to express myself, because I'm here to do that. I'm here to exist and express the way that I see the world in my life. And that's a truth that I want to be able to sit in.
So is it never, what happens, when does it go beyond conflict, the word conflict, into something else? So like control. When
I'm imposing. So if I'm imposing my way of thinking on you, then
conflict?
Doesn't have to be. There doesn't even have to be a conflict for me to impose my way of thinking on you.
Okay, no, yeah, I suppose,
like parents, there's no conflict. It's just the parents' way or the highway. There's no conflict about it, but you're imposing your way of the world on someone else. instead of saying, this is the way my world is, this is what I see from my window, what do you see on your window? And then yeah.
I think so, and I'm just touching on what we discussed last week, and even where parents and kids are concerned. It's conflict if my son argues back with me, right? I have a point of view, I say it quite calmly. Where does the word conflict come in is what I'm trying to say. And so then my son comes back with his point, then it starts to get heated.
Well, conflict would be in the fact that there are different opinions there, but it's not bad. They are very important that they're there.
Totally. But is it bad if it goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks on end?
Are you talking about arguing?
Well, probably, yeah, because I think these are great shades of grey, and I think
that would be not a good place to be, because if you keep arguing, it would be, I'm still trying to impose my side over your side. I'm trying to impose my world on yours. That would be when it turns into an argument that's not going to be useful for either side.
Yeah, I think you've answered my question. I think because really what I'm, the conflict, because we discussed it a few times last week, it's even like when we're in conflict with our children, so yes, it is good when we're both expressing, and my child's expressing, I'm expressing, I'm getting out what I want to say.
Yes.
But then there's a fine line where it no longer is conflict. It becomes control, arguing, anger, violence, So it's, I think my question is where is that point where when do you know that you've moved from being in healthy conflict with someone, a healthy debate, a healthy discussion, to it being beyond that now? It's not, the conflict isn't going to solve anything, in terms of it's becoming redundant. You're no longer being effective.
Yeah, I think it's common sense. If you're sharing, I know.
I know it's some tangible points, maybe. What's something where I hear what you're saying that's common sense, but everyone's line of common sense might be different.
That's true. That's true.
They might, there comes a point where conflict becomes destructive. It is no longer useful. It's no longer solving any issues. It's just becoming redundant, and it's becoming, and all sorts of, it opens the doorway for so many other agendas or, intentions or whatever. I think emotions, dates, all that.
Sorry, Misha. I think the point of the conflict is to debate, to share each other's points of views, but not impose. So I think that point that you're talking about is when we impose.
And how do we know we're imposing? How do we know we're not in conflict anymore and we're imposing?
For me, would be the body. Like, I would start to feel that somebody's ideas are probably making me a little bit rigid or something. My body would be giving off something. But I would also want to understand where they're coming from, because then we're still in the conflict. It's about, do you understand what it's like from my window? And I'll understand what it's like from your window. That's the conflict, in where we're clarifying what each other means.
But then I think, and that when you go from conflict, you're discussing a topic, but then when it starts to move into imposing or trying to control or whatever, imposing your way, trying to force the other side to see your way, that moves into something else. It's no longer about the topic, even though it's under the umbrella of the topic. No, but why is this and this and this, and I've done this, and we touched on it last week, and all of this science said this, or,
That's where I think common sense has to prevail. Because if somebody cannot see it from your point of view and you cannot see it from the other person's point of view, done. There's nothing else to go to.
Do you think it's an opportunity, though? This is probably what I was trying to touch on last week as well. An opportunity for, hey, let's look at something else now. Like we're no longer talking about the topic.
I think definitely there's an opportunity for that. That's if you're open to that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's what we've just been discussing as to how open are you to take on new ideas? How open are you to understanding other points of views where you're not controlling your experience constantly and not putting those walls up on information that could adjust you, that could change who you are.
Yeah, it leads me to that question that you and I talked about was, why is control, like, why is it important to recognize when we're trying to control a scenario or a situation or in that mode of control? Why is it important to recognize that? What do you think?
Why is it important to recognize? I think it's only important if it's been detrimental, if control is something that you're doing constantly. I don't think we're wanting to live our days, oh, there's control, oh, I just did it again. Like, you don't want to be in that state, No. I don't think it's something that you're looking to recognize constantly. But if it's something that you're noticing that it's detrimental to your relationships, that you feel you're not growing, you feel like you're stagnant and you're feeling stuck because you're keeping yourself very safe, I think it's a good time to look in and say, okay, why am I controlling everything? Why am I not okay with going with the flow? Why am I not okay with expressing what I feel, with expressing my truth? What am I avoiding? If it's that's when it's important, when it's become detrimental. And I noticed as well a couple of weeks ago that I became very critical of myself, and I think that's a control tactic as well. That's one of the strategies that we didn't discuss last week. That
big one.
Criticism of others and criticism of self was another form of controlling what I thought that people should do, or what people think I should do by criticizing me, and what I think I should do myself, the should, instead of just being me and just exploring what I'm doing and how I can be in all the ways that I can be me.
Yeah. And the controlling part of that, does that stop when you criticize like self and others? Does that stop growth and communication and collaboration? And does it impair those things? Does it impact on them?
Absolutely.
That why control is,
which is what I'm saying is, why is it important? When you said, why is it important to notice when you're in control? That's one of the moments that I did have to notice it. Not in my daily life, but suddenly here it was, criticism, a lot of self-criticism. And so when I looked into it and I noticed that it was a control tactic, stick with what I know, do what I say, stay within these parameters so that I can feel safe. Stick within this. What was I doing? This caliber of thing that I wanted to achieve. It was almost like you said earlier, controlling the outcome, making sure you're giving effective information, something that will be worthwhile. So if I was criticizing myself in not giving that, I was trying to stay in safety again. I was trying to provide something that I perceive to be worthwhile. And if it's not worthwhile enough, I'll criticize myself. So, because if it's not worthwhile enough, then I'm having to control what people think of me or how I'm being perceived by others. So it's still a control tactic instead of just looking at the criticism and going, okay, I actually even sent you the process that I created, which was the
With
Judge
you,
Judy
yeah.
criticism process.
Mm-hmm.
It's so effective. Looking at it and going, okay, all it means is I just need a little bit of adjustment. But what is the need behind that? And the need was constantly to stay in safety.
Mm.
And so I could give myself that. And once I did, I didn't need to be in control again. I didn't need the criticism. I didn't need the control. I was able to move through and just get to a place of creativity.
Yeah, I've had a huge inner critic for years. It's and it speaks to that sort of Freudian, the development of the superego. Just because the superego was there to keep us in line, to keep us safe in terms of societal expectations and morals, and so mine just went into overload at some stage in my life, and there was a constant inner critic, and still, it's still there, but not even close to what it was. And again, yes, I agree, and it speaks to what you asked me earlier. It became a fixation. To fixate on the inner critic is a safety mechanism as well, because I'm safer being critical in myself. Sorry, I just keep hearing the beeping. I'm safer to it's a known quantity for me to have an inner critic, constantly have a go at me. But then it also keeps me safe. I don't have to step out into the unknown. Kind of what you just spoke to. You're not stepping.
So if you're criticizing yourself,
Yeah.
what are you doing essentially there that you don't have to step out of yourself?
Well, I mean, aside from the obvious that the inner critic kind of serves to, serves to keep you in line. It serves to,
In line with what?
punish, yeah. Well, whatever I've been conditioned to believe that I have to be kept in line with. So it could be, and then that could be my own conditioning or external, environmental conditioning. It's whatever, somewhere along the line, my superego has decided, right, these are the set of rules you have to live by.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go outside of them, something bad's going to happen. It's that, it's just, so I have my own self.
What is that? What's the bad thing that might happen?
The unknown. It's the unknown. If you're going out into safety, you don't know what it looks like. Speaking to what you were just saying before, to not be in control. You don't know what that looks like. So because you don't know, you stay in control. You keep safe. You keep safe in these patterns that you know really well. Yes. I know the inner critic. I'll stay there, even though, like we've been pointed to, you're in a place of suffering. Because that inner critic is harsh and it punishes you. You're this, you're that, it comes up with all of the negative
self-abuse.
And but that's way safer than the alternative. And and then we're going into the realms of self-worth and all that sort of stuff. But it's just safer to stay in the known, to stay self-critic. But of course, that suffering, there's only so long that you can put up with that. There's only so long that, well, some people can do it longer than others. People can do it in a lifetime.
Well, they're not aware of it. So, when you do the work and you come and do personal development work, or you see a therapist and you start talking about these things, it comes out that, yeah, you are suffering anyway. So it feels like there's going to be suffering at the end of the tunnel because we don't know what's there. But at the same time, we're suffering regardless.
Exactly. Which is what you start to understand. How bad can it be? Sticking my toe out there. Can't be any worse than this, No, so the purgatory, the self-purgatory, it can't be worse than this. So you've got to give it a crack and see what happens.
Yeah.
Pretty much. see what else you could do. And, you know, those patterns prevent you. So if you have dreams and aspirations, they prevent you from being able to experience those because you're busy being stuck in your cycles.
Yep. Stuck in patterns.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't want. We don't want to be stuck in patterns, do we?
No.
Not the ones that aren't working for us.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. But yeah, you just got to start recognizing what's not actually working for me. So you mentioned before too about what it's like to not be in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
One of the aspects of, like, we see all these strategies that we get into avoidance, moving away from, you know, what we fear, trying to stay in safety and all that. But we probably all recognize that we're doing that. But how do we know when we're not doing it? So what is the aim? If we were to aim, because I mean, control isn't a bad thing. It's just if it's not working for you, if you're constantly controlling, if you're trying to control other people, if you're trying to control the way other people think, how they think, how they should think, if you're trying to control the way you want to think. So, you know, trying to control your own experience and limiting what information comes in. So we know all those strategies, but we see those strategies. But if we're aiming to not be in control, what do you want to get to? You know, that's what I was asking myself last week. And part of that was, you know, to speak your truth. I think that's a big one. Because often I find we're avoiding going to places because we're going to have to say, well, hang on, I'm scared here. And that would be speaking your truth. I'm scared about this. I'm scared to go up and try something different. I'm scared to move away from what I thought was safety. And that's speaking your truth. That's not controlling the moment. That's seeing the moment and choosing something different. What do you think? Is that something that you've seen when you're not in control, when you're actually sharing your truth?
Yeah, on reflection, I probably haven't thought about it in that way, but yeah, I think it's certainly what I've discovered more recently in the more recent years, especially since joining the NLP course. That yeah, it is about being authentic, and you know, and that's a scary thing because we've, like I just said, I've conditioned myself to be a certain way, and there's safety in that, so it's a bit scary. But then to actually go to speak to say my inner voice or who I am or what I really think or what I really believe, you know, and that takes a bit of unraveling to even get to that anyway. But once you do start to understand, oh, actually, I feel this way about things, or I want to do this, or it is a space of truth, you know, for me, it is. And so,
and courageous, because
yeah,
you might be
yeah,
wrong.
Could be.
You
Good
might,
chances.
you know, you might be wrong, and it's okay to
Yeah,
be,
it's a
and
very good point you make.
it's okay to be wrong,
Mm.
but it's your truth in that moment.
It
And
is.
that's one of the things where I've seen where, yeah, I'm not in control. I'm actually going to be very uncontrolled.
Yeah. And it's a big gamble when you
It's a
just said,
gamble of,
because
yeah,
if you might be wrong and then
yeah.
you're changing the status quo, you're changing up what you know, taking risks, you know, then and it's hard to even do a risk benefit analysis, you know, in terms of the business stuff, because you have no idea what's on the other side there. Sometimes you just, you know, kind of blindfolded walking through these things sometimes. So that's a bit
Yeah,
scary. You almost have to have
treading
faith.
water.
Yeah. But I mean, that said, that's not quite true where you haven't. I mean, when you talk about modeling, that's where you can see, hey, hang on, these are people I want to model. That's actually worked for them. That path has worked for them. We both might model people in the NLP realm, you know, like certainly when we were coached, by Amy all the way through that, and we would model, we can see it's something that's worked. It's worked for her and it's worked for many other people.
Are
So
you talking about modeling authenticity and talking and
modeling
speaking your truth?
authenticity, yeah, modeling authenticity, but also modeling a path that is unfamiliar to us as well. Like a realm, a path, a space that's kind of unfamiliar to us.
Mm.
That brings up fear as well and makes it difficult to speak to our truth because it's unknown. Does that make sense? It's unknown to us. So
yeah.
Yeah. So I see what you're saying about what does it look like to not be in control. And I think that's
So we were just talking about that authenticity, being authentic. Also, what comes up for me is learning to be present with myself and whatever's coming up for me in the moment. So if something's coming up, a bit of fear is coming up before I have to do something. Also learning to just be able to sit with what comes up. So that emotional intelligence and having the courage and strength to know that I can sit with it myself. That's another thing that was coming up for me when I was thinking, when am I not in control? It's like a superpower to know that, well, whatever feeling that comes up for me, I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to be able to sit with it. I'm going to be able to let it come through me, give me whatever message it needs to give me, and let it come out. And I'm still going to be okay. Instead of controlling, doing something, doing a tactic, or creating a strategy to avoid it. I think that would be another place where when I'm not in control, and it's okay to not be in control because I've got the tools in learning how to sit with what comes up. What do you think?
Yeah. So it's and again, it's a scary thing, but just being with the process, being with the moment, being with what comes up, rather than trying to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and by controlling the situation with all those, like those strategies that we've talked about.
Yeah, but it's a superpower that we learn in NLP to be able to learn to be with it. And I thought that was one of the biggest things, the biggest takes from prac and master prac, because when I didn't know that I could be with it, I was always avoiding it. It was too scary. The unknown was too scary.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly NLP was a platform for me. But since then, yes, I've learned those skills as well. Just being able to, not always, but just clearly, which is why we're having this podcast. But it's also in times when I am looking for a solution, a way out of those patterns, and not wanting to control the situation like I normally do, or recognizing, hang on, this is a moment where you'll probably go into fight or flight and control the situation and avoid everything and whatever. Just then choosing that moment where I'm like, okay, just breathe, go with it. What's coming up? It's okay. We touched on that last week too with the computer stuff, but yeah, just sitting with it, and going through the experience and seeing what comes of it,
And you were okay. You were okay.
Yeah, Diane, you actually learn from it.
Yeah.
You learn, oh, this is me. So again, the authentic thing. You're just becoming more real. You're getting to get a read. Oh, this is me. This is what's going on underneath here, or just being with the process.
Even if you had that outcome in your mind last week, I want it to start off well. I don't want any internet issues, and you didn't get that. You actually got the opposite. So you didn't get the outcome, but you were still okay with not getting the outcome.
Just, is this going into that perceived control that you were talking about, and a little bit, or not really? Positive.
I think it's staying within the realm of being okay anyway. Even with whatever's coming up, even with the outcome not being reached. you're still okay. You're still going to be okay because you now have the tools to be okay anyway, regardless.
Mm.
So it's that flexibility of being okay with what comes anyway in the moment and being okay with not having got the outcome. I mean,
Mm.
we did do the podcast, but your outcome would have been have no internet issues, just have it smooth at the beginning, and you didn't get that. You know, we
Mm.
got a
Mm.
few issues, and we were still okay.
So being fixated on an outcome is where control is concerned. So you can set goals and have an outcome, and it may not, but having that ability to be able to relinquish control
That's true.
and then let the outcome become a different outcome.
Yeah, being
Is that
okay
what
with
you're saying?
whatever.
So the new one is that there is the internet's crap, and the new one's we're going to do it from the car.
Yeah, being
Instead.
being okay with the outcome that you get anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
like
Okay.
like you said, relinquishing that control, relinquishing
Mm.
the outcome that you had, and seeing that we might get there in another way. That's all,
Mm.
or later down the track. But we still got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I think that really just speaks to a lot of the what we've been talking about. It's just being able to get to the point where we can somehow relinquish control. But there's a real, and I recognize this a lot even in myself and with people, is that there's just that real reluctance to do that, to
Mm,
to to relinquish it, to let it go. Do you think that speaks to safety?
absolutely, it's
It's
about
all about
that
safety.
staying in the realm of what we know and not going towards what we don't know, because
Mm.
that's the scary part.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, I think what we just touched on as well, like sitting with whatever comes up in your day and relinquishing control or relinquishing that ability to avoid what's coming up is also like a super skill in just being okay with all the problems that come up in your life anyway, as well. That's kind of relinquishing control because you're trying, like perhaps in parenting, you're trying to you're trying to avoid a disaster with your kids, but being okay with having the disaster come as well and knowing that you're going to be okay and your kid's going to be okay, and just you're building resilience, you're building experience, you're building all these tools on how to be okay with when disaster comes as well. That's relinquishing control as well. That's when we're not in control, but we're learning to live with life as it's just coming and with real things.
Mm. So it's about striking that balance of, um, well, do we want to say knowing, striking a balance of, well, there's a few things there, but knowing sort of when control is good, knowing when control is detrimental or causes suffering. Um, and also, though, letting go of outcomes, which is the same thing, relinquishing control, but it's just going, okay, this is so that's the resilience building that you're talking about when we can strike that balance really
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
between useful control, non-useful control. So
Yeah. I think you've said it in that balancing act. It's not
mm,
something we're doing consciously, but it could be something unconsciously that's kind of prioritizing, being on time for work. That's control. We need that, you know,
mm,
not, controlling what my child's eating constantly. That's not good control because they have to learn how to eat themselves. It's just constantly doing that balance of when I can let go as a parent, when I can start removing myself a little bit so that they can step up and do what they need to and building their own tools.
and only we as individuals can know that though, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
because for example, I mean, I work in a school, they try really hard to push healthy foods on children. It's a thing. Healthy, people talk about it, healthy lunch boxes, all that sort of stuff. But like you just said, I mean, that can be a real battle for a parent to constantly try and get their children to eat healthy food.
Yeah.
When does it become controlling and no longer a concern for a child or their well-being, when you're constantly working at making them eat healthy food? And yet it comes under the disguise as, well, but it's healthy food. It's not junk food, it's not packet food, it's not, But to me, this feels like an element of control in all of that, even under the umbrella of it being healthy.
That's right. Healthy according to who? Because our bodies are different.
And like you said, the children, when will they need to start taking responsibility for how they're looking out for their body? I mean, I had a terrible diet for years and years and years. I'm still all right.
Yeah, but that's the thing, that it's a balancing act on when you can start to let go so that they take control, and you have
autonomy for themselves.
That's right. It feels disabling to them, because if I'm constantly guiding and taking control of things, they're not actually doing it themselves. And the aim of parenting is to say, there you go, you've got these tools, do it. Go do it on your own. The aim is to let go.
Yeah, that's interesting. You talked about perceived control and positive intention last week. There are a couple of things, couple of notes that I took that I felt like I'd like to talk about more. What perceived control? When you mentioned that a few times, what do you mean by perceived control?
It's almost like perceived security. To me, it doesn't exist. What do you think? Does that actually even exist? Are we actually really controlling anything? Are we actually really secure? The only thing we know for sure is that we were born and we're going to die. Everything in the middle.
Interesting.
So, what I'm saying is, it's like that perceived safety. You think you're safe because you're staying in a realm of, I know this back to front, I can do it with my eyes closed, but I won't step into anything that's a little bit challenging because that's too scary and I don't know what's going to happen there. So you think you're safe, but you're only in the safety of what you know. But you want to be in a place where you're challenging yourself and you're stepping into different areas and you're going to be okay anyway, regardless.
Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to push outside of your safety zone into the realm of the unknown?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally. Yeah.
Because I want to grow. I want to push past the boundaries of my conditioning. I want to push past what I'm supposed to be according to other people. And I want to get to know who I am. And if I've got these ways of being that aren't truly my authentic self, I want to know where I am. Where do I start? Where do I end? I want to get to know myself. I'm here to get to know me. This is my life.
Otherwise, you're just living a conditioned response, something else, someone else's life, someone else's.
So, like, if we look at control in, let's say, your parents have controlled the way you eat. Your parents have controlled the way you think. Think this way, follow this political party. Your parents have controlled how you relate to others. Let's say we're part of a group. We all think like this. Don't look outside of the group. Don't socialize with other people. Let's say you've had all of these ways imposed on you and you don't even know who you are by the age of 40, or you haven't really found out what you're doing here other than other people's belief systems. And so what happens to the child is you create a persona. You create this ego, this super ego that you were talking about before, this super ego that stays in line with the conditioning, that stays in line with the people that you're surrounding yourself, their approved sense of you, what's okay. You don't actually get to know anything else other than that if you stay in that safety bubble, supposedly safety, but perceived safety. But if you start stepping out and going, yeah, that was all really nice. Love the way that you gave me that lifestyle and that culture and everything else that I belong to. But what am I outside of that? Who am I? Am I willing to look at other aspects of me? And you have to step out of that safety if you're going to get to know yourself, if you're going to grow into whatever your potential is. That's not been something that's been conditioned and imposed.
Well said. Can't really add to that. I 100% agree.
Is that you? So you feel the same?
100%. I mean, there's been times that I've thought, do we even need to grow? Can we not just sit in safety and our known experience, our conditioned experience, all the things that you just described? And I mean, my overall belief is that no, we shouldn't. That's my overall belief. But at the personal and individual level, sure. If that's where you want to be, in this existence, in this life, just staying safe and staying not wanting to push out beyond your boundaries, and so be it. And that's not what your experience is meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you're okay with either?
For an for an experience, I just think, yeah, if that's, I'm okay in the sense that if that's where people want to be, if they want to stay safe, I know what it feels like to try and move out of safety. It's horrible.
That's the truth.
That's why they call it shadow
true.
work.
That's so true, Misha. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's horrible. It can be
difficult.
Horrible.
Yeah.
It can be a really horrible experience because your body just goes into these crazy states of, fear and all sorts of ghoulies come up from the, from that fear. So it can be horrible. So if someone chooses in this lifetime that they just don't want to move out of that safety realm, the known, and they want to continue to sit in those patterns, and talk about the things that they would like to have been or whatever, or like to experience, and just keep doing that, that's their choice.
Yes.
We are here to make choice.
I love that. Because you're also touching on another aspect of what it is to not be in control.
Yeah.
Which is to let go of what you want for others, and that emotional freedom that you give yourself in let them be what they want to be, let them be who they want to be. And what we touched on last week, the prime directive, people don't want to grow, they don't have to, and you don't have to point it out. You can just do you and let others be who they are. Being okay with that.
And I think there's when you talk about perceived control, there's a perception that somehow we are going into an unsafety, or if we don't try to control how other people perceive their experience or this world, or if we don't try to control that, it's gonna be bad. They're gonna make things bad for me. Does that make sense? So in other words,
can you talk a bit more about that?
I think what came up for me just then is that I can see why there is, people think that if they don't try to control someone's belief or experience, that somehow their experience, so this is truly about relinquishing control, their experience is going to impact on my experience. So that person over there, for as long as they think that way or act that way, then their experience is going to impact on mine, and it's going to be bad when it does. And there's going to be so they're trying to predict outcomes based on someone's behavior over there, or someone's belief, or someone's that side of the story, you know.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so I think, well, again, this conflict keeps coming up in my head, but I really liked how we clarified that earlier. But one thing I have noticed a lot lately is just this, it's this right or wrong thing. So if someone, say, from my perspective, on the wrong side, like I'm on this side and it's the right side. You talked of left and right before, and you know, there's sides. Now it's fine to have, say, conflict in opinions and things like that. That's fine. You know, it's what's coming up. It's my true experience. But I think what we're finding nowadays, especially where there's anger and violence, it starts moving into the realm of, that's where people are trying to control. So it moves beyond conflict. And then people start trying to control another side or another body, some person's opinion. And they want to make it more like their own opinion or their experience or their paradigm, because they are fearful of the consequences of them not agreeing with them or them not being on the right side. Does that make sense?
So when somebody else is not thinking like you want to impose your thinking because it's making you get scared. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, you know, where you see, and you see people that are trying to, getting rigid, getting angry, getting upset, getting violent, it's all because they are trying to control
Yeah.
people's perceptions or people's understanding of a thing,
Mm.
or, you know, and the need to want to control is because of the fear that if they don't try and control this perception or person or worldview or whatever, or idea or belief, then it's going to impact on them. You know, that so the right side, say, is looking at the left side, and the left is going to impact their ways of the, you know,
Yeah.
is going to impact on them, sort of thing. Which is why we have conflict. You know, it is,
World
you know,
wars, number one.
yeah, yeah. And it's why we do enter into conflict, because I'm getting aggressive, I'm getting upset, I want to express my stance on this thing.
Mm.
And it's right. That's another thing. But we get into conflict because that's how, you know. So then what I was speaking to earlier is that, and just then when we talked about just allowing someone to have their experience, you know, so it is relinquishing control. I feel like it's when we can speak to our voice as much as, until a point, you know, so where it comes to conflict, you and I could get into a conflict now, for example, about blue and red. No, red's better. No, blue's better, you know. Now, it'll get to the point where I've expressed that sufficiently. Red's better, Jess, you know. And then it'll come to a point where you will, where you may believe, if I don't agree that blue's better, then I'm going to affect your world somehow. So then you'll try to control, you know, say somebody tries to control a scenario then when
From
that
the fear of
happens.
what could happen.
Yeah. So that's when we move in. So I'm just seeing, I think the reason why I've come back to this is because I'm seeing it a lot lately, where something moves from the realm of just conflict into real elements of
Control.
control. We need to control this person. We need to control these people. We need to control their belief and impose mine onto them.
What I'm thinking is, for example, if there's a fanatic.
Yeah, well.
And that fanatic becomes dangerous to the, you know, the public or your community. Then it would be important to try and control what that person's about to do or going to do that could be harmful.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying that's a good control?
Quite possibly for safety, for the general public,
yeah,
for schools, for the community. Where are you seeing
yeah,
that?
I think
like COVID, you know?
What about COVID?
Well, it was imposed on all of society because of the perceived danger that it posed to humans. Whether that
Yeah.
was an extreme way of doing it, that's another argument. But potentially, it could have been in the realm of safety for the numbers.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're definitely going into another realm there in the sense that
That was imposed on us,
totally. It's
vaccines, like,
well, and that's
wow,
perception, isn't it? Because we might think that it was, but others may think that it was necessary.
that's
So,
that's
which
right.
is going back to what I'm speaking to. I think when we allow the fear, it's perfect that the way you've taken it, because if we allow the fear, if I allow the fear, like if I think, no, that wasn't necessary, you might think that's not necessary, but thousands of others might think it was. But if I allow fear to come in by thinking, how can you think that's necessary? It wasn't necessary. You start to go into a realm of trying to control it, because all of a sudden,
So
that's fine. I mean, I can still have that opinion. It may not be necessary, but once it starts to take over my being and I start to become fearful and I want to control what those people think, I want to impose my opinion, my idea of what safety is or isn't. I'm trying to control the situation. I can still have an opinion. That's fine. It doesn't need to cause any further conflict between myself and that person or people or group of people, as far as I'm concerned, because there won't be, and this will move into a realm of something you and I discussed last week. There won't be, I won't be able to change their perception. And why won't I? We touched on this last week. It was very interesting. And you actually said, I wrote it down. It was really good because, you said something about NLP is talking to the unconscious mind, not the conscious mind. And believe it or not, this actually flows on from the point I was just making.
Believe me or not.
It doesn't work. It just creates resistance. So why does it create resistance is what I want to say. Why is it that when we're trying really hard to control the other person's perception, or even what you were speaking to is the prime directive, we're trying to get in there and change, we want them to see our way. That's essentially what I've been speaking to this past conversation. We want someone to see our way. Why won't it work, Jess, with regard to what I just said and your quote that you said to me about NLP speaking to the unconscious mind, not the conscious mind? It doesn't work speaking to the conscious mind. It just creates resistance.
First of all, speaking to what you just said about COVID, about the perceived fear that was there that then was sold on safety, it seems to be a very normal human behavior, and the powers that be know that is very normal behavior to create huge fear and then have everyone run to safety, because that's what we do normally. I mean, this whole control thing, this whole topic of control is around understanding that. But, watching and being able to observe us going there, coming to this Shempa place where we can see it, slow it down and observe it. I'm just speaking to that first because of the topic you just finished on. And a lot of people that can see that moment can question it. Well, is it really? Is it that fearful? Let's find out a bit more about it, COVID, But people that aren't used to sitting in that space of slowing down and watching, a lot of fear coming up, I better run to safety, People that aren't used to doing that, they would just automatically run to safety. It's a human behavior. It's just a natural part of being human. It's what we do. Why would you run from a lion? It's natural. It's instinct to save yourself. It's natural instinct to go towards safety. So, it's something that we're going to do naturally. Use it to stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
What you're talking about in NLP is speaking to the unconscious, is because if you speak directly to what you want to see in that person, you're going to have resistance because they might not be at a place of understanding that. They might not be, their internal frame would be quite strong in the fact that you haven't developed that person to understand. It's like going from 0 to 20 without going through the steps to get to 20. You're going to get resistance. It's like saying 1 + 1 = 20, Misha. You don't know what? No, it doesn't, Jess. Then I'd have to go through all of the numbers to get to 20 for you to go, oh, yeah, it does end up there. Does that make sense? You're going to get resistance if you're trying to impose something that is not where that person has been, or that person has naturally come to in their own evolution, they haven't emerged into that knowledge. So what you're talking about with NLP was, we speak to the unconscious, we use hypnosis, we use trance, we use different states to speak to the unconscious to be able to help clients slow down and receive information that perhaps they're not ready to receive yet because of where they are or how they've seen the world before. Is that what you were asking about?
Yeah.
What were you specifically talking about, which is, I think, from a text?
Yeah, it was. But I think I liked the messaging in there, because essentially it's taking care to recognize that you can't just change somebody's mind through conscious or even through conflict. It's because they've got a set of patterns, rules, beliefs, whatever. They're just it's all there. And like you just said a minute ago, you've got to take time to peel back, or to get into, or understand, or for them to understand their own thinking as well, their own fears, their own patterns of belief. There's so much in it that it just takes time. And when we talk about speaking to the unconscious mind, that's kind of, am I correct in saying that's kind of stepping into the makeup of what these beliefs are? So, you're kind of looking in behind the beliefs, or behind the rules that we've made within ourselves, the right or wrongs and all that sort of stuff. We're kind of stepping behind that and looking into, how did those patterns get there? So when you speak to the unconscious mind, what are you speaking to specifically?
It's not so much how did those patterns get there, because with NLP, we don't look at the why as much as how is this person doing it. So if the person is stuck in a way of thinking and it's worked for them, and they truly want to remove that, or they truly want to start creating a bit of change around it, because we don't actually remove either. We create flexibility and we open up options. And we open up options by including more seeds in there. We put more seeds, we plant more seeds hypnotically, so that the person can start going, oh, there is that option. There are other choices I can take other than this one thing that I've been stuck in, this one pattern. But it's done with respect, because the person has come and said, can you help me with this? You don't impose and go, you should be thinking my way. You should see the world the way I see it. It's not done like that.
I wrote that down because I think that really speaks to the understanding that you can't just impose, that you can't just control. You can't just impose your will or your understanding of a thing onto another person. It just doesn't work.
No, there's that respect
Well, it creates more conflict, because it's only going to get to a certain point. So conflict is useful to express yourself, not sure it's useful to solve problems. We need to go into a deeper part in terms of it sets a firm place of like, this is what I believe, and this is, and that's all well and good. And, you can be passionate and you can let out oh, but I feel this way and I'm very strong about it, and you can let that on. That's great. But it probably doesn't solve anything, because at the end of the day, the other person or the other side that you're in conflict with is looking at this thing from an entirely different space with their own set of rules and their own set of beliefs and their own. It's just going to serve as some sort of stage production. But until you get underneath and start actually working out what's the drivers behind this stance that you're taking, what's going on here, let's look at those things. You can meet at a better place. That's what I was speaking to in terms of that. What I liked about that, what you said, is you were actually, by that, making that statement, making it really poignant, that you can't actually just come in and try to control someone's understanding of anything. It just won't work. It's going to take time. It's going to be a delicate operation. It's going to, there's so many things. And yes, they could go and seek NLP or some other form of therapy to try and help them shift through those things, but it will take time.
Yep. Agreed.
So I think in terms of control, I think there is this perception out there that we can do that through conflict. We can control other people's. We can come to a solution.
Yeah, and I think there's not so much the solution, but the understanding of each other, and that's all that we're really after. What do you mean, Misha? What do you mean, Jess? It's all about we express our truths as we see it today. Might change next week, but we're expressing where I'm sitting. I'm sitting right here. Do you understand what it's like to sit here and see my world? And I'll understand the ways it's like to be Misha from your seat and what you see and what you feel. It's just an understanding of each other and each other's points of views. We don't actually coming into any solutions or of anything.
I suppose, we do for that topic for that day. Yeah. And then it can become, and then you feel settled and you have this balance of like, okay, I can move through that thing now. I'm not resisting it anymore. It's not causing suffering for me at the level that it was. I'm not saying necessarily it's not causing any, but usually when we work through things is to alleviate suffering, because we're suffering, we're coming to each other with this, I'm in an emotional state that I can't shift through, or quandary in my mind that I just can't get past, or whatever. When we come together, it's to work through those things and come up with a solution of sorts in that moment.
And problem solve,
exactly. So and usually when we get to that, though, you and I touched on this last week, it's not usually the thing that we come with. We come with this topic, so and so did this, or this happened, or and we walk away. It's actually not even about the thing that we came sometimes about. Now, like we pointed to last week, we're actually much more skilled now at just going down a couple of layers and coming to each other with that, rather than this surface level topic that we came together. We usually find that and certainly when we agree, even if we have big discussions, we come to a place that's a bit more universal, and far less that side, this side, it's all that person, me.
And it's usually just about us.
And when we say us, you and I have, and many other people, and certainly people that I've, had sessions with, coached, we all roughly come to the same place. We all roughly, it's fear, it's safety we're dealing with here. And that might look a little bit different for all of us and how that is, but the core of it is fear, safety, whatever, those kinds of things.
That's right. And then what do we do with that? That which is where I came to last week when I was sitting in that critical space of judging myself and, pushing myself, wanting more. When I really dug deep, it was about that I had some needs and that I wasn't meeting those. And I think that would be another place where you don't need to control as well. So when you can reach a point where you're meeting your own needs, you don't need to control others around you to meet those needs. So kind of being accountable and self-responsibility on how to meet your own needs, that's another place where control's not there, but a self-responsibility is. And I can meet the needs of what my body is highlighting me to. And I don't have to go outside to get that. I don't need other people to go, oh, Jessie's amazing. I don't need that, because I'm already giving myself that gratitude and that appreciation for how I'm stepping into something difficult.
Yeah, I understand. And you said control is there too. It's something I've been thinking about. When you're not meeting your needs, you tend to project, So projecting is the control element. We're projecting onto others. We're trying to control them,
Yeah, because you're trying to get your needs met externally. And you're basically saying, you need to be this so I can be happy. You need to be these things because I have like my intuition is kind of, my body is sending signals that I have these needs, and I have no idea how to meet them because I've not known how to do that. So I'm going to try and get them from other people.
Yeah, and we can too. Like, we can force people to meet our needs, even though they don't want to, say. But we can. That's when we're controlling them too. Well, we can make the husband feel bad, or we can make the wife feel bad, and we control in that sense and get them to meet their needs, but it doesn't feel authentic.
That's
so it comes back to that authenticity again. It's kind of like,
and I think we touched on last week as well some of the strategies in enabling, which is there, when you're enabling other people, you're basically controlling the way that they do life so that they need you because of an unmet need as well. So enabling, that strategy we talked about last week about enabling. And again, it's just around self-accountability. You don't know how to meet your needs, that's all. And you come and do the work with the therapist, you work it out, talk about it, find out how to do it. You don't need to control anymore. You can relinquish it.
Yeah, that'd be a great discussion too. I'd love to talk about juicy needs. That would be good. I won't go into it too much, but I've heard someone recently, this will be something to think about, state that they don't, needs isn't a thing. It isn't a thing. It's just you think you have needs, but you don't, or something like that. Anyway, I haven't really put too much thought into that. But I did push a little bit of a button, so I thought, oh, there's something there to think about.
Wow. I'd love to hear about that, because
that's pretty much it.
Most of the work I do as a therapist is around needs and values,
Exactly.
So everything always ends up about being something in there that you're not taking care of for yourself.
Exactly. Agreed. 100%. And positive intention, that was the other thing I just asked you before. What is positive intention behind control, so-called controlling?
So we're basically heading towards some tools. Going towards tools on if you find that there's certain things in your life that you're controlling, or that there's certain things that are happening, behaviors. What we tend to look at in NLP is to look at the positive intention, and people are like, what? There's no positive intention in controlling people. There's no positive intention in being demanding, and there always is. And like I said before, we don't remove anything. We look at it. We look at the pattern, and we work out using NLP processes. We work out, that it does have a positive intention for ourselves. Anything we do does. So if we can meet that need, doesn't need to be there anymore. You've got a choice. You don't need to repeat that pattern. You don't remove it because you might need it one day, but you do look at other aspects of meeting those needs without having to put that pattern in place.
So can you give an example of a positive intention of being controlling? Just a brief example.
The criticism pattern that I found myself in last week. I found that I was trying to control the outcome. I was trying to control how people perceived me. I did, trying to keep myself safe from ridicule and embarrassment. And so you would ask yourself, why is there a positive intention to do that? What is the positive intention? What are you aiming for? And the aim is to keep myself safe. The aim is, I don't want the ridicule. And so is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. But if that is my outcome, keep myself safe from ridicule, what's the need behind that? And that's basically to keep myself safe. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing to keep yourself safe. But like we talked about in the last podcast, am I in danger? There's some real questions around that. You're not in danger. If someone thinks you're ridiculous, or if someone thinks, well, this person has nothing to offer me, that's okay.
You are in danger if you can't handle that, though. Like if you can't handle someone's, you might be able to handle it. So then you think, no, I'm not in danger. Someone might not be able to handle it. So therefore, keeping safe.
So there is a positive intention, though. If you understand the positive intention, you can really see and understand what you're dealing with. You're not just pulling back and saying, no, I have to stay safe. I have to stay safe. You don't understand what it's about yet. So looking at the positive intention, it's actually doing something for you. It's actually working for you. Now, if you came to that conclusion, it is to stay safe from ridicule. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. So once you understand that, it's, what you're dealing with, then you can work on what it is that you need. And then, we can go into all sorts of aspects of understanding ourselves, state control, perceptual positions. There's so
These
many
are all NLP terms, right?
Exactly. You can go into so many ways of reframing it. Am I talking about world politics on how to save the planet? No. So am I going to be ridiculed at the scale of Anthony Robbins or, no, it's just me, Jess. Yeah. There's probably going to be about 10 people listening to my Yeah. So I can become realistic about it, and I can see the need there that I can make change in just at my level, my small way, and I can kind of reframe it, and I can look at it from different points of views and from different places, and it's not too bad.
So you can, when you recognize that it's positive intention, you then have a choice. So you're giving yourself a choice.
And clarity. And clarity to understand what the need is. If I don't understand what the need is, then I can't give myself the need, and I can't see what I'm running from. There's a scary monster. It's huge. And then when I look at it, it's actually only this tiny.
Perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. That's good. I like that. I like positive intention, especially for someone who has had a history of inner criticism. It's nice to look at it in a positive light. Hang on, you're doing this not because you're a big scaredy cat, wuss, whatever. It's actually because it has a positive intention. It's to keep you safe.
It's doing something right for you. Everything we do does. It's just a matter of looking at it and seeing if it's still useful. Is it working for you or not in this context?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, choice is an amazing thing. Really.
And that's where we want to get to, just that place of, like we were saying, Shempa. We want to get to that place of stillness. We want to get to that moment where time slows and we can see ourselves. We can see where we're fixated. We can see the choices we have, and it opens up. You know, you can feel it in the body. You can start to calm yourself with state control. You can look at oh, geez, you could bring Enneagram into this. You could bring all sorts of things, all the work we've done on getting to that moment of stillness where you can make a different choice for yourself.
Well, that's what I love about NLP. I think it's when you, like you just said, when you are in that moment of making a choice, how do I want to address this particular, quandary? And it opens up all of that framework, the NLP framework, and gives you a whole swathe of tools to work with. And some are really fun. Some can just be a really fun way of doing it. You just, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought that the edit, the self-edit was really fun, because it's kind of makes you feel like, when we spoke to this earlier, it's like a choose your own adventure situation. It's kind of like, oh,
I love that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I get to self-edit. That's awesome. Okay, so it looks like that, but how would I like to do it instead? And you get to choose, and that kind of makes it fun. And this is what I've really enjoyed about this process.
If you want to go through door 2, go to page 57. Remember?
Yeah. I loved the Choose Your Own Adventure books.
They were the best.
Well, this is the thing. I think people think that life is out of their control in that way. Really, but it kind of isn't in that sense. When we have choices as well, we can, and that is kind of good control. I suppose positive control, where we go, oh, I've got choices. I'm going to go this direction. I'm going to choose to go in this direction or this direction. And it's almost taking back control in a way, where we feel like we're out of control. And in a sense, we kind of are out of control when we just conditioned responses all the time, when we're just sitting to the program. But so that's interesting, and do we want to have more control over our path? Do we want to create our own adventure, and
or do we want to surrender
into
whatever's there?
Okay. What is that? But I hear what you're saying. I know it's a buzzword, but surrender. But what specifically can you mean by, do you want to surrender? Is that relinquishing control?
Yes.
Do we even have to choose at all then, are you saying?
No, we don't. We can just surrender to the moment.
There's a lot of stigma around surrender. That's the only reason why I've gone into this a little bit.
Yeah. What kind of stigma?
Well, because it is. It's like, it sounds like you're saying the opposite to it, like, oh, we'll just surrender and just let it go wherever. That's kind of what surrender sounds like. Let it all go. You don't have to navigate your path at all.
It sounds lovely.
It does.
I think that's when you're not in control, though. That's one of those places that, if that's where you want to get to, you can get there. I mean, we've been talking about getting to that point of seeing the options and going for one of the options. But what if you do surrender? That's just another option.
Yeah, it just seems like quite a vague term. What does that mean? What if you surrender? Is what I'm trying to say. I just don't understand. I know what the word surrender is, but I've had big discussions around this word, because I just think, in this context, what does that mean? Surrender. Let go.
Let go of that control. Letting go of where we think we need to take life, as opposed to where life is taking you.
Got you. Okay. Yeah.
Opposed, for me,
be open.
Be open, but also at the beginning of the year, because I've been pretty ambitious in my life, I've been very strategic as to how to get to places, what I need to study, how committed, how determined am I, But by the start of this year, I was kind of in a different space where I was thinking, which way do I go? Do I stay in one industry or move towards the other? Do I invest in this industry? But I thought, what if I just surrender and let whatever happens need to happen, and let's see where life is just opening up, evolving for me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a bit of a surrender, and that's a way I've never done life before.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there.
And I've loved it. I observe and see what comes into my space. Who wants to come into my space? What things open up, what projects are on offer, what opportunities, and just letting it. And I'm just sitting here and letting it happen. I'm not sitting here doing nothing going, oh, well, I'm not going to do a podcast, but
I'll just surrender. Maybe the podcast will jump on my lap today.
Well, I won't do. Misha might just come along. I have to put my investment in as well, but into the things that are coming into my life.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. And again, it's still speaking to the balance of things. I think where we go, okay, I have an intention. I want to do this. I want to experience this. But it sounds like you're saying that you're relinquishing control of the overall outcome of how that's going to look. So
you're driving everything.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That's been exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
No.
You don't need to drive all the time. Sometimes you can be in the back seat and having fun and,
yeah, I'm not
exposing your bum to the back window and being stupid.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I certainly am starting to do much of the same, but there's still, and I can feel it in my body when we talk about feeling in my body, there's still elements that want to control the fuck out of things. Like I just can feel that, in my body when you speak to things, and that's fine. I'm okay with that because this is all the process. So in that sense, I probably am surrendering to even my own experience of wanting to control things, of feeling that control in my body. Because I know that my overall intention is growth and expansion. And how that happens, I'm not sure. I'm just kind of allowing whatever to come up and to some degree, allowing that to just unfold as it is at the moment. And that's a big effort for me to relinquish control like that,
Is it?
Oh, God, yeah. It's a big, yeah, it is. I've been in that pattern of trying to control all sorts of outcomes for such a long period of time. So that's why this particular topic was important to me, because I just thought, yeah, that's a juicy one for me.
Yeah.
Trying to control lots of outcomes and relinquish it at the moment by surrendering. That's a relatively new concept to me.
I think I'm getting pretty good at surrendering to my own life and what I want for me, but I haven't quite got there as a parent. I'm getting there. Okay. I'm getting there. But I think that's the bit that's been the hardest to let go of.
I'm probably the opposite. I think as a parent, I've become a bit far. It was almost like I had to, it was in my face. There's still more though. You can those strings, those open strings, they tug quite hard.
They do.
But yeah, no, I'm getting there even in terms of relationships and friendships and kind of where the direction my life's going in. I can feel that I'm surrendering to that. I can feel it. I'm in the process, whatever that means. And I may always be in a process that's trying to surrender, that's rather than try to control, let it go, Anyway, but that's all a process, isn't it?
That's where we are. Day to day.
Exactly, day to day.
So we've done a really good job of speaking to some more strategies that we found last week. And today we've kind of been sitting in the space of, all right, what is it to not be in control? And how easy is it to do that? Hasn't been that easy, because that's where you and I found that most of our work has been in. Trying to have that freedom, allowing others to be whoever they need to be, whoever they want to be, not imposing, trying to not criticize ourselves as much as possible, doing the work in NLP using all of the concepts that we have, um, learning how to meet our own needs and speaking our truth. And we've also touched on some of the things that we could use as NLP coaches to help people, if they wanted to help them relinquish and let go and surrender a bit more, living more purpose, living more authentically.
And at the same time, using those tools too, as we said, choose your own adventure, be creative, be expressive, be creative, so when we platform, when we move, whatever the word is, from say that Shempa moment when we go, oh, I can make decisions here, I can make choices here, everything just slows down. And it could be even like what you spoke to last week, which was really cool, about how you said where your daughter's concerned, you said, just give me some time, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I can't remember what it was. And
buying time.
Yeah, bought yourself some time. So even just that alone is really, it's creative, it's kind of like, I'm moving out of my conditioned response of fight or flight, anger, frustration, fear, into time. I just need some time, I mean, at the minimum, that's what we can do for ourselves, is buy ourselves some time.
Yeah.
And breathe and calm our nervous system. And, so actually we did talk a fair bit last week about noticing and signals and indicators and things like that come up. I think that would be a good conversation to have, just because that's something, it's a skill we've certainly refined over the years. It's taken some time though, so I think we can easily just talk about it like it's not a big deal, but it actually is. It takes a lot of work to refine that noticing and watching for indicators and all that sort of stuff.
And developing that awareness.
Yeah.
Because you helped me a lot in that, developing the awareness of my body. I think you do that quite naturally.
Yeah, now, but it's taken time. I think it's definitely been a process of
it has for me too. And I think that's where people can move into as well, if they want to look towards getting to that Shempa moment and slowing time, being more aware of the body. And perhaps what do you think about creating some tools around that?
Yeah, I think not just for control, but obviously many topics that we talk about, but slowing down time, say, if you want to call it that, or just being in the moment of something that's happening, checking in with your body. It's essential. It's for me. And I think, by the sounds of it, it's becoming quite universal, where it's a really good tool to use to be able to go, hey, something's happening here. What, I can feel it. I know that I've had plenty of, especially clients that don't know how to get into their body and just feel what's going on. And it's a really good indicator.
Yeah, it's very common. It's very common for them to be disconnected.
Yeah,
because we can be very heady. We can live our whole days just in their head sometimes, without taking a minute to just think, wow, that shoulder is hurting, or I've got a bit of a thing going on with my knee. Like, people just kind of notice it vaguely, but they don't slow down enough to put real attention on it.
Well, it's a very good point you make, because we can be heady and we think that we can solve all our problems there, in one foul swoop. But actually, sometimes our heads just keep regurgitating the same stories and keep us in that same cycle.
And the conditioned responses
of fear and whatever, and fight or flight response or whatever. It keeps us like, I can think of so many times when in the prac course, in the NLP prac, where my head was sore from trying to work problems out, and actually the relief came and the answers when I'd stop thinking and go into the body and just calm and breathe. And, you know, and all of a sudden the tension in my head and all of the tension of trying to work something out went away. And the answers sort of came. They rose up in a way from below, from the body, it feels like sometimes.
They were there all along, Misha.
Yeah, yeah. And you're just trying to force a scenario. You're forcing an answer, you know.
Is that control? Forcing the outcome?
Yeah,
trying to force the outcome, trying to force the solution?
Definitely. Yeah. So, and it speaks to pressure that we were talking about last week as well. But yeah, it is. It's very much trying to force and sometimes the answer is that there is none. But that's a real hard one for really heady people to get their heads around. It's just like it's like what you said, I just want to buy time. That's the answer right now. So not necessarily there is none, but the answer might be extremely simple and have nothing to do with what you're fixated on. Anyway.
The other thing that just came up for me as you were speaking, you said that you were fixated on that, finding the answer, and then there might not be an answer. Was around, you're in your head, but you're avoiding, or you're problem solving, or you're doing some analysis of the situation. But the only thing that's not happening is the experience of it. Like, just sit and experience it, you know, which is what we talked about, not being in control, just letting the experience happen. I mean, after all, we're here to experience life.
Yeah.
But we're doing all of this heady stuff and doing all of these tactics to avoid experiencing it.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird, you know, striving for this perfection as well, you know. I think, and that's a control thing also. Again, you know, it's like you and I spoke about authenticity at the beginning of this. And yeah, I think the perfection is not trying to be perfect in a way. It's kind of weird, but it is.
So, just being human.
Yeah.
And experiencing life.
Good.
I think that's a nice place to end it.
I think so. It feels like it.
Yeah, it does feel like it.
Yeah.
But it's been great. Like, we've gone into so many other ways. So perhaps in the next podcast, we could talk about some of those ways that you were mentioning, and about the body, how to slow down.
Noticing, you mean? Because that's
there's indicators.
Yeah, indicators. I think that, I mean, that those noticing can be used for it's used for everything, actually.
Not only in control.
No, yes, it's actually the key to change. You know, you have to notice first that there's change needs to happen, or we're looking for that or whatever. But
you've got to have noticed something to come to therapy as well. I've noticed this thing that I do repeatedly.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about noticing. Real juicy stuff.
Cool. All right.
Noticing and indicators, all those things. It's all really cool.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jess, thank you, Misha. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.